Lesson 8, Stimulants. In this lesson, we're going to talk specifically about the stimulant medications used in the treatment of ADHD. Now, stimulants are the oldest and most common medical treatment for ADHD. As a brief history, stimulant medications were first officially used for ADHD in the 1950s. However, 20 years earlier, in 1936, a physician by the name of Charles Bradley discovered that benzedrine, an amphetamine-based medication approved by the FDA as a nasal and bronchial decongestant, improved children's behavior and performance in school. While his findings were generally ignored, the advent of Ritalin in 1955 began to move the field toward the use of stimulant medications for disruptive behaviors in children. Ritalin soon became the medication of choice for ADD and then later ADHD, as the name of the diagnosis changed over time. The effectiveness of Ritalin resulted in the development of many other stimulants over the subsequent decades. So the base of this history is that more or less serendipitously, on accident, a physician found that amphetamine-based stimulant medication helped disruptive behaviors in children. And from there, we began manufacturing and developing a multitude of medications that work similarly to help provide some relief in these children's behavior. Today, there are two broad classes of stimulant medications, the methylphenidates and the amphetamines. Medications based on methylphenidate include Ritalin and all of its derivations, Focalin and all of its derivations, Concerta, Metadate, Daytrana, which is a methylphenidate patch, and a newer medication called Quilivant. It's a liquid-based for kids who can't swallow pills. Medications based on amphetamine include things like Adderall and all of its derivations, Vyvanse, which is a newer medication that seems to be very effective for some kids, and Dexedrine. The differences between these medications, even those within each group, are too detailed for the purpose of this course. However, there are two important points that I'll make as it is relevant in a later discussion. First, one of the historic issues with stimulants was the fact that these medications only lasted at most about 4 hours. As such, children with ADHD would have to take one dose before leaving home to go to school, and the second around midday while they're at school. So if a student took one at 7 a.m., he would be due his second dose at about 11. This worked well for school, as the second dose would wear out right around 3 o'clock, just as the school day was ending. Unfortunately, this didn't help at all in evening, after-school activities, homework, tutoring, or anything else that the child has to do once the school day was over. In response to this concern, companies began developing long-acting medications that would remain effective in the child's body for up to 10 to 12 hours. Now, if a student took a medication at 7 a.m., it would be effective until about 5 to 7 p.m. Plenty of additional coverage to address not only school, but after-school activities and homework and things like that, without the potential of affecting the child's sleep patterns. The second main point, as molecular science and understanding has evolved over the past 50 years, researchers have refined their ability to make these molecules, either the methylphenidate molecule or the amphetamine molecule. And they're exploring ways to change, divide, or add to them in a way that makes them more effective. Let's take Vyvanse, for example. Vyvanse is actually a great example of this because it is a very complex molecule. The researchers began with an amphetamine molecule, which they then basically cut in half. For those of you who have some molecular background, you know that many molecules are, for generally speaking, mirror images. So there is a point in the molecule where you can slice it and both sides are relatively similar. They're not identical, not mirror images, but they're similar. So what they did was they took the amphetamine molecule, split it in half so that only the right side, which is a very active agent for ADHD, and they used that right side and then connected a lysine molecule to it. And what lysine does, when they added that lysine molecule to it, it addresses the bioavailability of the medication. As a result, we see Vyvanse as a very complex molecule that is a combination of amphetamine and lysine, but it addresses some of the issues that we see with, or it addresses some of the issues that we talk about with stimulant medication use. For example, we talk often about the concerns with abuse, which I'll talk about in just a few moments. What this lysine molecule connected to the amphetamine molecule does is it disallows or inhibits the body's ability to process that outside of the gut. So, whereas with other medications, a person may abuse a stimulant medication by crushing it up or otherwise taking too much of it, taking a whole bunch of pills, for example. What the lysine molecule on it does is that you have to ingest it through your stomach. It has to go through your liver, which is what releases the lysine component from the molecule, the active amphetamine molecule, and only then is it available for use in your brain. As such, they call Vyvanse a prodrug, because it helps eliminate some of those concerns with potential for abuse and overdose and those kinds of things. So you see, with that example, researchers and molecular scientists have become very advanced and very sophisticated in their methods for addressing some of the issues that we have with these medications, while at the same time making these medications more available and useful to our children and adults. Adults take these medications as well. All right. Now let's shift for a few minutes and talk about a few misperceptions associated with stimulant medications, because invariably, when I talk with parents who are considering stimulant medication use for their children, there's some concerns. There are questions that they have. And so let me address a few of those here. The first misperception is that children who take stimulant medications are at increased risk for future substance abuse. This misperception is, at least on the surface, understandable. After all, some of these medications are amphetamines, and we have all heard that methylphenidate and methamphetamine and other stimulants that are abused are very similar from a molecular perspective. So they look similar when you look at them under the microscope. That, however, is where the understanding really ends. Research in this area is very clear. Children with ADHD, in general, are at increased risk for substance abuse. As we've already talked about in previous lessons, children with ADHD are at risk for risky behaviors. They are at risk for engaging in behaviors that are sensation-seeking, stimulation-seeking. And so in general, kids and adults with ADHD are at risk for engaging in dangerous behaviors, which could include substance abuse. However, what we do know from the research is that this risk drops off considerably when the ADHD is treated, including treated with stimulant medications. And so let's be clear about that. When a person has ADHD, by the very nature of their ADHD, they are at increased risk for challenging, risky behaviors, including substance use. But when we treat their ADHD symptoms, that risk decreases. They are less likely to abuse substances or engage in those types of behaviors. So in essence, that misperception is actually the opposite of reality, and that is, it's not that taking stimulants increase the risk for substance abuse. Taking stimulants decreases the risk for substance abuse in those with ADHD. Now, the second misperception is that children who take stimulants have stunted growth. This misperception is not so easily dispelled, actually. In fact, some research supports it. The idea of growth stunting is really rooted in the issue of decreased caloric intake. One of the main side effects of stimulant medication is decreased appetite. If you have a decreased appetite, you're not consuming as many calories. And if you're not consuming as many calories, you're not going to grow as much as you would otherwise. I often tell my parents that you know when the stimulant medication dose is effective because the child's appetite when the medication is active, is suppressed. And that usually means lunchtime. Again, if we know intuitively, if you're not taking enough calories, you're not going to grow. So it's important to consider a few other facts. First, the research suggests that the anticipated growth stunting is generally about an inch. Okay, so it's not like we're talking about your child is going to be 6 inches shorter than he otherwise would be, that your child where you and your husband are 5'8", and if he just wouldn't have taken the stimulant medication, he would be 6'5". That's just not the case. The difference is that, instead of being 5'9", he's going to be 5'8". So it's really not as significant of a difference than we think. The second is that we also know that when a child doesn't take their medication every day, meaning they don't take it when school's out, they don't take it on holidays, they don't take it on the weekends, we know that the caloric intake that they experience during those quote-unquote drug holidays accounts for and accommodates for those missed calories otherwise. And so it actually cancels out any potential growth stunting just by having those, again, called medication holidays. So while we can't completely dispel the myth of growth stunting, it is certainly manageable, and it's not as severe and significant as we might think. And so, if we can see that stimulant medications are effective, and we know that worst case scenario, or the most likely scenario, is that if there's going to be growth stunting, it's going to be only about an inch. Is that 1 inch really a justification for not treating your child if he needs to be treated? Now, the third misperception is that children who take stimulant medications will be smarter and more academically proficient. This misperception is really just a misperception of the effects of the medication. Let me say this first, very clearly. These medications do not make kids smarter. They do not offer the child cognitive abilities that are not already present. Similarly, they do not give the child academic skills that they don't already have. You can assume from my wording here that there is a caveat. That is, while the medications don't give the child skills and abilities that they don't already have, they do give the child access to the skills and abilities that they already possess. Note the difference. Children on these medications may look like they're smarter and look like they have more academic skills, but it's simply based on the fact that they now have access to the skills that they already possess, and they can use those skills when they need them. This fact underscores the importance of treatment modalities you're going to learn about in Unit 4. Children with ADHD who have not learned how to organize their environment will not magically become able to organize their environment once they're on medication. They'll be more available neurologically, attention-wise. They'll be more available to learn those skills. It'll be easier for them to be taught those skills, but they're not going to have those skills without the learning. So even if they're on medication, we have to provide those other strategies. We have to provide those other skills so that they can then use them when they need them. But again, just to be clear, the medications don't give the child skills that they don't have. It just makes them more available to use the skills that they do have and to gain new skills that they don't have. The fourth misperception is that children who take stimulant medications will need to be on the medication for the rest of their life. Now, as we discussed in Lesson 6, symptoms of ADHD change as a child ages. That said, they never really go away. Most people who were diagnosed with ADHD in childhood continue to have ADHD into adulthood. For some, they may start stimulant medications in childhood and continue taking stimulant medications into adulthood. For others, though, lifestyle choices, including diet, occupation, exercise, and those kinds of things, some things that we're going to talk about in Unit 4, may result in the reduced need for medication. It's difficult to predict who will and who will not need the medication into adulthood, But we know that those who engage in psychotherapy, especially the building of social skills and other deficit skills, they're less likely to need medication in the future because they gain the ability to manage their symptoms, and they gain an understanding of their symptoms at an adequate level, affording them the opportunity to remove the medication and continue to function adequately. The fifth misperception is that physicians who prescribe these medications are treating children like guinea pigs because they have to change the medication from time to time. Now, this is not just a concern with ADHD. We hear this complaints for kids who struggle with anxiety, kids who struggle with depression, adults who struggle with anxiety and depression and bipolar disorder and all kinds of other mental health conditions. We see this because it's true. Sometimes we have to change medications to make sure that the medication is effective and that we're using the right one. And because we're not yet at a place where we can confidently say that this child's ADHD symptoms as a result of X, we can't be absolutely sure that this medication is going to be effective because this medication may have more of an effect on Y. And the child's problem is with X. So we have to experiment a little bit. We have to try different things. Now, we're getting better. We know that with particular presentations, certain medications are going to be more effective than others. The amphetamines are better with inattentive types, while the methylphenidates are a little bit better with combined and hyperactive impulsive types. But generally speaking, any of these medications may work for any presentation of the child. So as such, some adjustments may be needed. Therefore, although physicians are getting better at determining the best initial medication, they may still have to adjust the medication simply because there's no way to predict with any level of significant absolute confidence whether the child will respond positively to the medication or not. It's not that the physicians are treating the children like guinea pigs. Rather, they're just unable to predict with 100% accuracy which one will be the best. So the bottom line with stimulant medications, as I tend to put it with my patients, stimulant medications are effective in the vast majority of individuals with ADHD. Once the correct medication is identified, over 90% or so of children with ADHD will respond positively and show symptom improvement with a stimulant medication. As mentioned previously, this does not suggest that all of the children's problems will be resolved. Instead, it simply means that the child will become more available to learn new skills and then use those skills appropriately. Now, we're going to discuss again more of those skills in Unit 4, but let me end with this final point. The benefits of stimulant medication is that once the child takes the medication, you will see improvement. If the medication is effective and if it's the right dose, you will see improvement within about 30 or 45 minutes. Unlike most other medications, once the child takes the medication, you're going to see the efficacy within, again, 30 to 45 minutes or so. What's more, the medication leaves the body very quickly. So the fast-acting medications, the older medications, they leave the body within about 4 hours. The longer-acting, usually 10 to 12 hours. But you will know, you will see, you will witness when the medication is coming off. Parents come in all the time talking about how they can tell when the medication is wearing down, and they recognize that as sort of the threshold by which time they need to have homework and other activities that require concentration completed. It's not a mystery. It's not, I don't know if it's working, I don't know if it's effective. You will know. You will see it. You will know right away. It doesn't have to build up in the system. And this also is what contributes to what I was talking about earlier with the medication or drug holidays. Because of the way that the medication is in and out so relatively quickly, you don't have to take the medication every day. So you may take it on Monday through Friday, but then on the weekends not take it. You may take the medication every day of the week, but if there's a holiday, if it's 4th of July or if it's some holiday during the middle of the week, you don't have to take it in the middle of the week. So you can take it on Monday and Tuesday, not take it on Wednesday, take it on Thursday and Friday, not take it on Saturday and Sunday, and so on. You can pick and choose for the most part when you take it. Now, certainly, if you take the medications later in the day, there's a greater likelihood that it's going to affect your sleep because, is probably common sense, but if you take your medication, your stimulant, long-acting medication at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, there's a very good likelihood that you're probably not going to get to sleep before midnight that night, even if you need to, simply because the medication is still going to be active. You're still going to have the stimulant in your system until 9 or 10 o'clock or so at night. And so it's going to take you a little bit of time to wind down then afterwards. So we have to consider those kinds of issues. We have to consider those kinds of thoughts with the stimulant medications. So again, they're very effective. You know right away. There's no waiting to see if it's going to build up, if it's going to be the right dose, if it's going to be the right thing for your child. You're going to know that pretty quickly. There are other side effects or other things going on. But if you want some more information about that, check out our PYAC YouTube channel. We talk in much more detail about that. Again, this is a little bit beyond what the purpose of this course is that this course is about parenting your ADHD child, and we're including this unit simply because one of the ways to help you do your job as a parent is to make your child available to learn all the things that they need to learn, and medications will help with that. Okay? Hope this is helpful. Hope this dispels some of those questions or answers some of those questions and dispels some of those myths and misperceptions about stimulant medications. If you have questions, certainly write to us in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you and your experiences and your observations. So thanks, and we will see you in lesson 9 where we're going to talk about non-stimulants.